Have you ever felt like you're pushing and pushing, but nothing seems to work? Do you find yourself stuck in a cycle of trying harder, only to see your efforts backfire? If so, you're not alone. This video dives into a paradox many of us face. Sometimes, the harder we try, the worse things get. And believe it or not, there comes a point where giving up might be the best thing you can do. Let's start by looking at this trap of trying too hard. It's a common situation many of us find ourselves in. We're taught from a young age that hard work pays off, that if we just put in more effort, we'll succeed. But what happens when that doesn't work? What happens when all that extra effort just leads to more frustration and fewer results? The truth is, excessive effort can often backfire. It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. The harder you push, the more resistance you encounter. This applies to many areas of life. In work, relationships, personal goals, sometimes our intense focus on making things happen actually prevents us from achieving what we want. There's a psychological explanation for why this happens. When we try too hard, we put ourselves under immense stress and pressure. This triggers our body's fight or flight response, flooding our system with stress hormones. While these hormones can be helpful in short bursts, prolonged exposure can actually impair our ability to think clearly and perform well. Moreover, when we're hyper-focused on a goal, we tend to overthink. We become so wrapped up in the details that we lose sight of the bigger picture. This overthinking often leads to mistakes. It's like when you're learning to ride a bike. If you focus too hard on not falling, you're more likely to lose your balance. So how do you know if you're trying too hard? There are several signs to watch out for. One key indicator is a feeling of constant frustration. If you're putting in maximum effort but seeing minimal results, that's a red flag. Another sign is burnout. When you're exhausted all the time, struggling to find motivation, that's your body telling you you're pushing too hard. Physical symptoms can also be a clue. Tension headaches, muscle pain, trouble sleeping, these can all be signs that you're overexerting yourself. Pay attention to your body, it often knows when you're pushing too hard before your mind does. Emotionally, you might notice increased irritability or mood swings. When we're trying too hard, we often become overly sensitive to setbacks. Small obstacles start to feel like insurmountable challenges. You might also find yourself becoming overly critical of yourself and others. This perfectionism is often a sign that you're putting too much pressure on yourself. In your thought patterns, watch out for obsessive thinking. If you can't stop mulling over a problem or goal, even when you're supposed to be relaxing, that's a sign you're trying too hard. Similarly, if you find yourself constantly comparing your progress to others or to an ideal standard, you might be pushing yourself too much. Now, here's where things get interesting. The solution to this problem isn't to try even harder. Instead, it's about learning the power of letting go. This might sound counterintuitive, but sometimes, releasing your grip on control can lead to the breakthroughs you've been seeking. When we let go, we open ourselves up to new possibilities. We create space for creativity and inspiration to flow. It's like when you're trying to remember something, often, the harder you try to recall it, the more elusive it becomes. But when you let it go and think about something else, the memory suddenly pops into your head. Giving up in this context doesn't mean quitting or abandoning your goals. It's about redefining what giving up means. Instead of seeing it as failure, think of it as a strategic surrender. It's about stepping back, taking a breath, and allowing things to unfold naturally. This approach can be incredibly powerful. When we stop forcing things, we often find that solutions present themselves naturally. It's like the old saying, let go or be dragged. By releasing our tight grip on control, we allow ourselves to flow with life rather than constantly fighting against it. There's an art to this kind of effortless action. In psychology, it's often referred to as a flow state. This is a mental state where you're fully immersed in what you're doing, but in a relaxed, effortless way. Athletes often describe being in the zone, where their actions seem to happen automatically, without conscious effort. Achieving this state isn't about trying harder. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's about finding the right balance between challenge and skill, and then allowing yourself to be fully present in the moment. When you're in a flow state, you're highly productive, but it doesn't feel like work. Time seems to fly by, and you're energized rather than drained by what you're doing. So how can you start easing up and finding this balance? Here are some practical tips. First, practice mindfulness. This doesn't have to mean formal meditation, though that can certainly help. It's about learning to be present in the moment, rather than constantly worrying about the future or dwelling on the past. Try setting aside a few minutes each day to simply breathe and observe your thoughts. Don't judge them or try to change them, just notice them. This simple practice can help you become more aware of when you're pushing too hard, allowing you to catch yourself before you get stuck in that cycle. Another helpful strategy is to set realistic goals. Often, we try too hard because we're aiming for perfection. But perfection is an impossible standard. Instead, focus on progress. Celebrate small wins along the way, rather than fixating on an end goal that might be far in the future. It can also be helpful to practice self-compassion. When things don't go as planned, resist the urge to berate yourself. Instead, talk to yourself as you would to a good friend. Be kind and understanding. Remember, everyone faces setbacks and challenges. It's part of being human. Learning to take breaks is another crucial skill. When you're feeling stuck or frustrated, step away from the task at hand. Go for a walk, listen to music, or do something completely unrelated to your goal. Often, these breaks allow your subconscious mind to work on the problem, leading to new insights when you return to the task. Incorporating relaxation techniques into your daily routine can also help. This could be as simple as deep breathing exercises, or more structured practices like progressive muscle relaxation or guided imagery. These techniques can help reduce stress and tension, allowing you to approach challenges with a clearer, calmer mind. Another powerful tool is reframing. When you catch yourself trying too hard, pause and ask yourself, what if this didn't have to be so difficult? Sometimes, simply changing our perspective can open up new, easier paths forward. It's also important to learn to distinguish between productive effort and unproductive struggle. Productive effort feels energizing and purposeful, even when it's challenging. Unproductive struggle, on the other hand, feels draining and frustrating. If you find yourself in the latter state, it might be time to step back and reassess your approach. Throughout history, there have been countless examples of people who achieved great things by learning to let go. These aren't stories of people who simply gave up, but of individuals who found success by releasing their tight grip on control and allowing things to unfold naturally. These stories teach us valuable lessons. They show us that success often comes not from forcing things, but from aligning ourselves with the natural flow of events. They remind us that sometimes, the best way forward is to take a step back. Of course, this doesn't mean we should never put in effort or work hard. The key is finding balance. There's a middle ground between pushing too hard and not trying at all. It's about learning when to apply effort and when to ease up. This balance isn't a fixed point, it's different for each person and each situation. Part of the journey is learning to recognize what this balance feels like for you. It's about developing the wisdom to know when to push and when to pause. So how can you apply this wisdom in your daily life? Start by becoming more aware of your efforts and their results. Notice when you're pushing too hard and practice easing up. Experiment with doing less and see what happens. In your work, try setting clear boundaries. Define what enough looks like and resist the urge to go beyond that out of a sense of guilt or obligation. Remember, overworking often leads to diminishing returns. In your relationships, practice letting go of the need to control others or situations. Focus instead on being present and responsive. Often, our relationships improve when we stop trying so hard to make them perfect. In your personal growth, be patient with yourself. Growth is a process, not a destination. Instead of constantly pushing for dramatic changes, focus on small, consistent steps. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small it might seem. Remember, the goal isn't to never try hard. It's to find a sustainable, balanced approach to life and its challenges. It's about learning to work smarter, not just harder. As we wrap up, let's recap the main points we've covered. We've explored how trying too hard can often backfire, leading to stress, burnout, and decreased performance. We've looked at the signs that indicate you might be pushing too hard and discussed the power of letting go. We've redefined what it means to give up, seeing it not as failure, but as a strategic approach to achieving our goals. We've explored the concept of effortless action and the state of flow, where high performance feels easy and natural. We've also discussed practical strategies for easing up, from mindfulness practices to setting realistic goals and practicing self-compassion. We've touched on the importance of balance and how to apply these principles in various areas of life. The key takeaway is this: sometimes, the path to success involves letting go. By easing up on our desperate grip on control, we open ourselves up to new possibilities. We allow space for creativity, inspiration, and natural solutions to emerge. This isn't always easy. Our culture often glorifies hustle and non-stop effort. But true success, the kind that's sustainable and fulfilling, often comes from a more balanced approach. It's about knowing when to push and when to pause, when to strive and when to surrender. As you move forward from this video, I encourage you to experiment with these ideas. Notice when you're trying too hard and practice easing up. Be patient with yourself as you learn this new skill. Remember, it's a process, and it takes time. You might be surprised at what you can achieve when you stop trying so hard. You might find that solutions come more easily, that relationships flow more smoothly, that goals are reached with less struggle. So the next time you find yourself pushing hard against a problem with no results, remember, sometimes the best thing you can do is to stop trying so hard. Take a step back, breathe, and allow things to unfold. You might just find that what you've been seeking comes to you naturally, when you're not trying so hard to grasp it. Thank you for watching this video. I hope these ideas have given you some food for thought and some practical strategies to apply in your own life. Remember, it's okay to ease up. It's okay to let go. Sometimes, that's exactly what we need to do to move forward.